What is Hiplife in Ghana? Hiplife, early 1990s, fusing American hip hop. JQ, who introduced Jama, Hiplife became a voice for Ghanaians to elements of Hiplife. Instruments used, and Hiplife.
And we'll go up whole half.
Before the video starts, I want to apologize if I butcher any of the names or butcher any of the pronunciations of some of the words. I tried my best, and let me know in the comments how to pronounce some of these words or if I pronounce them good or not. Yeah, that's basically it. Now back to the video. What is Hiplife? Hiplife is a music genre that originates in Ghana, early 1990s, fusing American hip hop with Ghanaian high life music. High life is a style of dance music of West African origin, influenced by rock and jazz. Important figures of hip life include Reggie Rockstone, who coined the term hip life and was a pioneer, JQ, who introduced Jama and Palango to the genre, Chief G and the Tribe, one of the first rap groups of Ghana, Talking Drums, a group who experimented with hooks and choruses in local languages, and Native Funk Lords, who created pidgin rap. Hiplife is a cross-cultural hybrid art discussing Ghanaian culture and society, Akan storytelling, and proverbial speech. Hiplife focuses on moral issues and the belief that individuals can change society by changing themselves. Hiplife has given rise to other sounds like Asanto and Asaka. As a side note, Ghanaian drill, an offshoot of Asaka, was included in the 2024 Grammys Best African Music Performance category. Hiplife became a voice for Ghanaians to express their frustrations in a time of economic hardship. Elements of Hiplife. Hiplife is characterized by repetitive structure, often with alternating verses and choruses and some repeated lines and verses. Hiplife is often in Twi and English, covering topics from girls having fun and partying. The genre is characterized by heavy use of synthesizers and drum machines and often recorded in studio environment. Hiplife is a fusion of hip hop, jama, and palango, and is also fused with funk, bass, and boom bap. Features combination of solo singers and audience participation. Instruments used in Hiplife include a metal bell, a ground rattle, local drums, guitar loops, drum samplers, and in northern Ghana music, they use string instruments, fiddles, and wind instruments, including flutes and horns. Rise of Hiplife. There are a number of factors that led to the rise of Hiplife, like hip hop's ethos of black empowerment and capitalist success, the rich culture of African Americans and diaspora communities, the economic downfall of Ghana, availability of less expensive digital recording hardware and software, and Reggie Rockstone, a musician that moved to Ghana in 1944, fused Ghanaian language, rap, rhythms, and cadence seen in hip hop and boom bap. When it comes to Hiplife, scales that are used are pentatonic, hexatonic, heptatonic, and when it comes to chord progressions that are used, are a 1-4-5 or a 1-4-1-5 chord progression. Now that we have an idea of the scales and chord progressions used for Hiplife, I'm going to demonstrate how you build these scales and what the chord progressions mean. To start off, we're going to make the hexatonic scale. And depending if you're making major or minor, it's a bit different. For the major hexatonic scale, you start with the root, and in this case it's going to be C, and you go up a whole note, a half note, a whole note, and another whole note, and that would be the major hexatonic scale. Now to build the minor hexatonic scale, we will start with the root note, which in this case it's C, and then we'll go up whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole. And that will be your minor hexatonic scale. Now for the next scale that we're going to build, it's going to be the heptatonic scale. And for the heptatonic scale, it's the same thing. If you're building a major or minor, it's going to be different. And to start off, we're going to go up with major, and we're going to use the root of C. And we'll go up whole,
whole, half, whole, 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 half. And that will be your major heptatonic scale. Now, to build your heptatonic scale, it's pretty easy. So we're going to start with the root of C, and we'll go up whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole. And that will be your minor heptatonic scale. And now we're going to make the pentatonic scale. And for the pentatonic scale, it's pretty easy too. And depending on what you're trying to make, if it's a major or minor pentatonic scale, will depend on the format. So for this case, we're going to make major pentatonic. And the way you do it is pretty simple. So you go with your root note, then you go whole, whole, half, whole, whole, whole. And that will be your major pentatonic scale. And now we'll make the minor pentatonic scale. And it's pretty simple. So we'll start with the root note. And from here, it's where it gets a little strange, but it's pretty simple. So you'll go up a whole note, but then you'll add a half note. And you'll go up whole, whole, whole. And you'll do the same thing that we did earlier, where you add a whole and a half note. So you go up a whole, then a half, and then you go up a whole note. And that's how you will make a minor pentatonic scale. And now that we have an idea of the scales that are used for Hiplife, we can get into chord progressions and break down what the numbers mean, which is pretty simple. So when you hear a 1, 4, 5 chord progressions, all it means is this. You'll start with your first note, then you go up to your fourth note. So 2, 3, 4, then you go up to your fifth note. And those would be the three notes that you would use in the chord progression. And when you hear a 1, 4, 1, 5, all it means is basically the same thing. You start with your first, then you go up 2, 3, 4, that'll be your fourth note, and then you go up to your first note again, and then you go up to your fifth note. And that will be a 1, 4, 1, 5 chord progression. And when you hear any numbers being thrown in music, that's basically the whole idea behind it. You're just using those numbers in order to understand what notes you're going to play on and what chords are going to be used. And now that we have context of what Hiplife is, a little bit of its history, and some of the scales that are used and chord progressions, we can get into my favorite segment, which is making a beat. Now with that little segment out the way, here's how the beat turned out. And with that, that concludes the video. I hope that you were able to learn something from it, that you were able to take away either some of the chord progressions that are used, how to build scales, what the numbers mean when it comes to chord progressions, and a little bit of the history for Hiplife. I had a lot of fun. Definitely a lot different from the typical stuff that I'm used to making. There's a lot of rhythm, and I find it really interesting, honestly. I had to listen to like a lot of songs to kind of get an idea of like what I was gonna make when it came to making the beat. But it was fun, honestly, and I hope that you have a wonderful day or night, depending on when you're watching the video. And yeah, signing off.